We got 3 techniques that changed our guitar playing. I'm going to say one, Nicholas is going to say one, and the third we came to a consensus, and that is definitely going to be the most useful, so stick around to the end of this video. Do you want to do the first one?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
This is something that isn't necessarily ever taught, and it's something that one of my old mentors showed me because he was teaching me these really big, chonky chords. I remember he was teaching me this chord voicing.
Pretty.
The C sharp minor 9. Very pretty, but when I first started to play it, it sounded like... And then I would go home and practice it, and my wrist would tense up, my hand would start hurting, and I'd get all this pain. And what he pointed out is he's like, every time you go to play this chord, you're tensing up, and when you don't get the sound of a note fretted, you push harder. So you could create more tension, and pushing harder is our natural instinct. Because it's like, oh, even with a simple bar chord, like, you know, I'll teach someone their first bar chord, and a lot of times it sounds like this.
That's how mine sounded.
Right?
F was the hardest chord to play.
Yeah, oh yeah, right?
Yeah.
And then the natural instinct is, oh, well, I'm not getting all the sound, so I gotta push harder. And then 5 seconds later, your hand's cramped up. It still sounds the same. Doesn't sound good. And we're just left with, like, pain.
Yep.
Pain of not playing and the pain in the hand.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter how hard you push the string down. And this goes for playing big, chonky chords, and it also goes for playing lines, too, which I'd always had struggled playing fast and playing with speed. And I noticed this, you know, this was the real revolution of this whole idea. And once I lightened up my touch, I could play a lot more stretchy chords. I could play a lot faster lines. And the example he gave me, I remember, he was like, cool, do me a favor. Put, you know, your first finger on the 5th fret of the high E. Okay. And he was like, push down as hard as you can.
Okay.
So I literally, like, he's like, with all your fingers if you want. So I'm like, literally flexing as hard as I can right now. Okay. That's how that sounds.
I'm listening, yeah.
Right? And then he said, cool, now take your hand off with your pinky, mute the string, and then gradually apply the most gentle amount of pressure you physically could until you get the sound, right? Like I'm literally barely touching.
Do the sounds back to back.
Yeah, so here's literally like I'm you can see my pinky's hanging off. I'm not like even doing anything.
Sounds the same.
Exactly the same sound. One, with all this tension, even if I'm just pushing down hard with one finger, all these other fingers are going to tense up. It's like you can't even move them. But if I'm very, very, very light with this finger, like you'll even feel in your own hand. It's just the rest of your fingers are lighter. So it, you know, when you're practicing a fast line or something, if you're pushing down really hard, you're just creating more tension through your whole hand and your wrist, and it's going to slow you down no matter what. It's a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not picking fast enough, but maybe you're holding the pick too tight, you know? Which is a different thing. Sometimes you got to hang on for dear life on this end. But it's really more of the left-hand vibe. It's just light touch.
So that's our first technique.
Yeah.
This is just a light touch.
Lighten up, baby.
Now, technique number 2 is, for me, the exact opposite. But you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. So for the light touch, I have a light touch over here on my left hand.
Yeah.
But over here, I am playing extremely aggressively. And maybe aggression isn't the right word. Maybe intentionally is the right word. Because, look, you know, take a listen to this. Say you're just playing a simple pentatonic line in A minor Bach shape, you know. Like that sounds like I don't mean what I am saying.
Yeah,
you know, so like
you're kind of like, do a little bit of
like
this.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But like I always found, okay, I'm playing the right notes. But, like, the feel is wrong, you know? So I was like, okay, if I notice a lot of my favorite players, I see, like, Derek Trucks. You see him playing, and he's ripping that thing.
Absolutely.
And I see Stevie Ray Vaughan, and he is
destroying.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, so what happens if I took that same type of aggression, especially over here on the right hand? The left hand is still, like you said, light. Yeah. And so instead of it sounding like... it sounded more like... And to me, I was like, oh, that sounds like a guitar. Like, that 100%. Sounds more guitar-y and sounds more intentional. And once I started playing with that type of aggression, even especially when it gets up here, you know, like, you know, if you're... Like, if you're not playing... Like, if you're not playing with that type of, like, I am digging in really, really hard. I feel like I might break a string. But it holds out. Yeah. And I feel like that technique is just really digging in the right hand. And it's not even like if you were to, you know, zoom in, it's not even anything like fancy. I'm
Yeah.
like literally just downstrokes. Like
100%.
it's not, you know, I mean for faster riffs, whatever, but like
Yeah.
I am playing just really, and here's the other thing, like doing this type of like that type
The
of
rake,
thing. Yeah,
yeah.
the rake really seems to work well. So instead of, you know, like playing, you know, I don't know, instead of just playing this note, like
100%.
raking into it, I don't know, it just
It gives it the whole vibe.
yeah, it's like it like gives it that feel. And so for me, I don't know, I incorporate that totally, but then it's
Yeah.
also on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm like really digging in, and
100%.
that technique has allowed me to, I don't know, communicate with people. Like it communicates an emotion more rather than of like, this to me feels ambivalent or like feels like wishy-washy.
Yeah.
Where like if you dig in, it just, I don't know, it feels like you
100%.
mean to say it. Our third and final technique, and this is the one that we both came to a consensus on, and is the most useful by far. What is it? I don't remember.
Forgot. Oh, switching from your pick to your finger.
Oh, we got it.
God,
We got
okay.
it. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
So this is the third and most important technique. I feel I see so many people doing this.
Everyone does it.
Everyone.
And
John
everyone-
Mayer, Joe Pass, Spanky
100%.
Alford, you name it.
And it's funny because everyone has their own
Yeah.
way of doing it.
Yeah.
There's, you know, I've taught a billion people how to do it,
Yeah.
but everyone ultimately develops their own technique
Yeah.
around it. It's probably the most used thing in my playing, the most used technique in my playing. And it's transitioning from playing with your pick to playing with your fingers.
All right.
Right? So,
So
you
I'm
always...
I got to get a close-up.
Oh, you know, maybe I'm going from, you know, some rhythm thing where I want to play these, like, kind of chords, right?
Yep.
And get that rhythm sound. And then comes up, it's time to do a little lick. So what I do,
Yeah.
right, so I guess let's start with the pick. So I hold,
gotta get a different
oh yeah,
angle
there you
here. Yeah.
so, you know, this is how I hold my pick. Just
Okay.
thumb and pointer, sometimes I rest my middle finger on there.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I want to transition to
Yep.
going to here, right, it happens very fast, but all I'm really doing is essentially what you want to do is you want to get your pick, how I do it, in between my kind of like finger bend area,
Yeah.
and that's where it's going to live. And that gives me enough dexterity where I can still independently use all these fingers
Yep.
without it falling out.
Cool.
It might be a little weird at first, but I can still do like, you know, it's still
Yep.
going to be right there. And then when I want to take it back, I just slide it up with my thumb.
Do that one more time.
Yep, and I grab it. So, you know, I'm in here playing. I want to grab it, slide it up on my finger with my thumb, catch it here. And then same thing when I want to put it back from soloing. I'm going to slide it right back there with my thumb and then replace my thumb pressure with that pointer finger.
So the pick is faced like, let's see how it's oriented. So, okay.
Yeah, sometimes it gets a little sloppy. It
Yeah.
doesn't always necessarily end up oriented like this. Sometimes it will end up pointing out. I personally like to tuck it in a little bit like this just because it gives me a little more insurance and it's not flailing around, right?
Mine's almost
the same.
identical. I saw Spanky Alford do stuff like this. Yeah. And then he would do something like this. And so I hold the pick like this, you know, it's nothing too crazy. You know? And then when I need to transition, I'll slowly, and then my fingers, I think I want to get it tucked a little because I play a lot of just like with these two.
Yeah, I see you do that a lot.
It's just like almost like these two, you know.
And then when you switch to your pick,
It's literally
Whip it
like
right out, yeah.
I have it more oriented. So I notice yours is oriented down,
yeah,
where mine is more oriented this way.
up. Oh, I see.
So,
I tend to use the
This is-
side of my pick more than the tip of my pick.
a different
maybe
sound.
Maybe that's why.
but like for me, I'm playing like this normally, and then if I have to play, I don't know, any type of finger picking. Yeah, it's, and I feel like this is really useful for like if I was playing like a John Mayer song, like,
100%.
and then you wonder. You know, and then like I would want to play, you know, with some chords.
100%.
Yeah, it's funny how we both arrived at the same conclusion.
I just figured I thought everyone did it differently.
Yeah, we basically do it the exact same. So 3 techniques that changed our guitar playing. The first one was playing light with your left hand.
Left hand lightness.
Mine was playing hard and aggressive with my right hand. But the third one that we both realized we figured out,
everyone does.
Everyone figures this out, is how to play with the pick and also
with your fingers.
With your fingers.
And it's funny because there's no like rule book for this. It's kind of just becomes a feel thing.
Yeah.
You just have to do it a lot and figure out how you want to make that movement happen.
What would you say a good practice technique would be for your...
For me, this is one of those techniques where it's harder if I'm thinking about it while I'm doing it. A lot of it will just kind of happen on an unconscious level. And I know how annoying that sounds to people because it's like, give me a direct way to do this.
Yeah.
I would try kind of emulating, you know, what we were doing and even just practicing it like freehanding. You know, you're at the coffee shop, hanging out, waiting in line, bring your pick with you and do this. You know, try to get it from your thumb to your fingers and back too.
Right, so you'd be playing, so if I was to try to do that, so play a C chord, and then I would switch and I'd, you know, use my fingers.
Exactly.
Because it's very different sounds. So that's a good way to practice it. I like that.
Hope you enjoyed these 3 techniques. Let us know your favorite in the comments below. And if you have a different way of doing, you know, the pick-tuck kind of thing here or any other essential techniques that you think are super badass, comment below and let us know.